All right, welcome to Homeschooling with Classic Stories. We're on week 7 of the Beatrix Potter book. So by now you know, take out your book from your box, take the cover off, and of course we're going to have a look first at our map. And so again, make sure you direct your child to the compass, whether you're using northeast, southwest, or whether you're focusing on words like left, right, straight, between. Our story today takes place over here. So last week we were further away, but this week we are focusing on Duchess. That's the little dog that you see here in the corner. And then of course Ribby, who is much further down the lane. You'll of course want to address the fact that you'll need to walk down the curvature of the lane and make sure that you know that there's a curve in the road or a bend in the road, however you choose to talk about that. But we are looking at both Duchess and Ribby for this week. All right, let's go ahead and have a look. Before we begin, the tale of the pie in the patty pan. You'll notice in this story that it's written slightly differently. You see that the pictures are fewer and there's more writing. That can be a little bit frustrating to your child because at this point in week 7, they've probably gotten used to a decent even split of pictures to words, and this one tends to be a bit more word heavy. I really recommend, because this story is about tea time, that you instead choose to read this story to your child while they take tea. So as far as having like a tea party with your child, there are a lot of really great herbal teas that you could try. Things like vanilla herbal teas and such. I also strongly recommend my favorite that my son also is willing to drink is called something like Egyptian licorice. It just tastes sweet. It doesn't have a strong licorice flavor, but that's also a favorite. Anyway, the point is that go ahead and set up a little tea party for your child so that they can engage in having tea while you read the story to them, as this story is very words heavy. You can, of course, show them the pictures while they are having their tea party, but I think that's a nice way to kind of fill the gap of this story being quite so long. All right, so our story starts with Ribby, and you see her in the picture, and it is an uncolored picture. So go ahead and have your child make a guess. What color cat do you think that Ribby is? You can also ask them about other colors within the picture. You can also ask, what is the cat doing within the picture? And of course, Ribby is writing a letter, which is how our story starts. Then, of course, you should have a full-size picture to have a look at, which is nice. And we have our dog, Duchess, who you'll read about in the story. Also is then reading a letter, which has been delivered by the postman. Our community helper for this week is the postman. So make sure you point out to your child that the postman is there. I think it says postman in the story, but however you choose to talk about people who deliver the mail within your culture, use whatever language is appropriate to your culture. All right, so you see the dog is reading the letter within the garden, and then ask your child what is in the letter. So in the letter, Ribby is inviting Duchess to come to tea. All right, other things to address. In the next part of this, you see that Duchess has realized that her friend the cat, Ribby, is going to be making a pie that she doesn't like. Her friend Ribby is a cat, and she is a dog, and her friend will be making a pie made of mice. And it seems very odd to me, personally, that a cat would make a mouse pie for a dog, especially when the dog seems vehemently opposed to it. So one of the things that we talked about within this week was being kind and considerate to others, meaning think about things that someone else likes that maybe you don't like. A really good example of this for my son was with candy. So for example, he really likes M&Ms. But he knows that I don't particularly like M&Ms. And so giving me M&Ms is not the kindest thing to do. He knows that instead I prefer caramels. And so it would be much nicer to give mommy caramels because that's what she likes. So really emphasizing this idea of What the other person likes is the true kindness, not the thing that you like. So that's what we focused on for this start. This will become more and more important in this story. But again, you see more black and white pictures in this one, which actually made this story a little bit more frustrating. We then have the cat who is putting in the pie, and we see that there are 2 ovens. So you see that there are oven drawers. Which part of the oven is she putting it in? She's putting it in the lower part of the oven, and that will become important. So what's in the upper part of the oven? The upper part of the oven is empty. What does she do next? She's going to clean her house for the party. And our dog is going to try and sneak a pie into her oven. So Duchess is going to try and sneak a pie into the oven. Where is the pie? Is there a pie in this picture? The pie is under the blanket in the basket. So you can focus a lot on prepositions. If you choose to focus on upper and lower, make sure you also do some preposition work over here as well. All right. And then, of course, we have them passing each other in the street. So you can say that they have passed by each other. And then, let's continue on. All right, and then we have who does Ribby visit next? She visits her cousin Tabitha Twitchett. You can talk about her cousin being a cat, and her cousin is very strongly in favor that cats should be invited over dogs. If you would like to get into that bit of ugliness, you are welcome to. We chose not to because cousin Tabitha is not really strongly mentioned until the end again. But that's kind of an ugly part of the story is, you know, cats should only invite cats, which perhaps is true considering that our cat was inconsiderate and made a mouse pie. Anyway, we have the dog breaking into the house. So you might want to point that out. Is it nice to go into other people's rooms without their permission? So that's a nice thing to talk about. No, of course, it's not okay to go into someone else's space without their permission. So that you can then choose to talk about going into your child's room without their permission and them going into your room without permission, that sort of thing. All right. Then everything gets, last thing, where does the dog put the pie? The pie goes into the upper part of the oven. And so the dog goes home, Duchess goes home, and she does what? She gets ready to go to the party. You see her doing a lot of things. She brushes her hair, her coat, and she picks some flowers. This would be a nice part to talk about giving gifts to others. Making sure you don't go somewhere empty-handed. If I think most cultures believe that, so I think that's a pretty easy one to talk about. Don't show up to someone's house empty-handed. What's a nice thing you could bring to someone's house? Then, of course, we have our cat who is doing similarly. She is also getting ready, and she is checking on her pie and getting her last-minute decorations ready. Our dog is running up the street to be very punctual. You can talk about being on time. We're also going to focus a bit on clocks. So what time does she leave her house? She leaves at 4 o'clock. What time is she supposed to go to the house? She's supposed to be there at 1:15. So if you want to show your child that on the clock, that's fine, but we'll also be doing that later in the week to talk about timings. So the dog, Duchess, knocks on the door and asks for entry. And this is actually a very nice thing. If you recall last week with the story of Mrs. Tiggy Winkle, I thought I was done with that name, but I see I'm not. If you remember, the girl knocks on the door politely before entering. This is also a second opportunity for you to talk about how nice it is to knock and to call in and wait for someone to respond before entering a room. And so this is a good time to practice that. So you can stop and have your child practice that. It's a good time to act this out. This is actually a really easy scene and it's not problematic really. Just have your child act out this scene of entering the home. All right. Okay, and you see that we've lost our color, which I really recommend at this point that you just start reading straight through. Your child is probably very tired of this story at this point because I think it's pretty easy to tell what will happen. You can even ask your You can ask your child what they think will happen. Do you think the dog will, which pie do you think the dog will eat? I think we can all guess that the dog is going to end up eating the mouse pie. Okay. I really skimmed over this page with all the sugar and the dropping and all of that. The dog, of course, eats the entire pie by herself while the cat eats 5 muffins. If that seems a bit exorbitant to you, it did to me as well. This is also a really good point to point out that it's always nice to not overeat when you are at someone's house. And if at this point your child is actually eating cookies, cakes, sandwiches, whatever you put out for the tea, you can then compare. Oh, I've only eaten 2 sandwiches, whereas the cat had 5 muffins. Anyway, so then they start talking about the patty pan. I recommend that with the patty pan that you show a picture of that if your child is really focused on it. If not, you can simply describe it as an item that is within a pie that you wouldn't want to swallow. So the next part, we keep going. What happens to the dog? The dog begins to feel sick. Why does the dog think that she is sick? She thinks she is sick because she ate a patty pan. Why is she actually sick? You should be able to predict this at this point. The dog is sick because she thinks she swallowed it, or because she ate mouse pie. So whichever answer your child gives is fine. Something that is often a little bit confusing in this particular one. The cat, Ribby, runs for the doctor. The doctor is a magpie, is why this joke is, he is a pie himself. This is a magpie. If you don't live in an area that has this type of bird, this is a magpie. And he's also using a certain expression. So gammon is similar to, it's like a type of ham. And then talking about gammon and spinach, in British English, that typically just means nonsense. So this bird knows that this whole situation is ridiculous. So the bird is very much making fun of the situation. So if you want to point that out, the bird is laughing at the dog and the cat for being silly. Cousin Tabitha makes a nasty remark. You can talk about that it's not nice to, revel in other people's misfortune. She knows that someone is sick in the house and it seems a bit too delighted by it. So you can talk about that if you so choose. I hurried through this part because, oh my goodness, look how long this is. So I tried to pick up the pace and read quickly. What happens to the pie? It goes into the backyard. The doctor comes and goes. Then, of course, the doctor eats the pie that's in the backyard and breaks the tin. And that's the end of the story. If you're referencing Cousin Tabitha, she decides she's only going to have cats to her house, which is not a great moral to the story. If you want to address that, you can, but do be aware that that's in there, that she's, I guess, now only going to invite cats to her house. But in fairness, she seems to not think about what other people would like and made a mouse pie. So maybe that's fair. Anyway, that's your story for this week. Again, I recommend having a tea party with it because the writing is so very long this time and there are so few pictures, and the pictures that are there, as you have seen, are not colored for many of them, and so your child may be frustrated by that. So that is our story. I hope that you enjoy having tea with it, and I will see you later on in the week to talk about what we did for projects around this story. Have a nice week.